The inaugural issue of the New Thinking Aloud magazine was just released on March 1st. You can download a free PDF copy from the New Thinking Aloud Foundation website. That's newthinkingaloud.org. You can even order a printed copy from nta-magazine.magcloud.com.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we are going to look at the human kingdom and the animal kingdom. We're going to see what distinguishes them and what do they have in common. With me is Miranda Alcott. She is an intuitive animal communicator. She is also the author of a chapter called Listening to Water in a book titled The Healing Properties of Water edited by Masaru Emoto. Welcome, Miranda.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for asking me to come.
It's a pleasure to be with you once again.
Yeah.
You know, I'm of mixed minds about this question, and I say so, and I'll just lay it out. One of my mentors was the cosmologist Arthur M. Young, and he had a very detailed cosmology in which he maintained the human kingdom, of which biological humans such as ourselves represent a tiny part. I think he would say it included angels and maybe deities. But the human kingdom, he saw it as distinct from the animal kingdom, even though we are animals. Just in the same way, I think that animals are distinct from the plant kingdom. He would say in the mineral kingdom, you have minerals, plants, animals, human, all distinct kingdoms. On the other hand, there are writers like Desmond Morris, the author of The Naked Ape, in which he says, there's hardly anything that really distinguishes us from animals, that we're so much like animals.
Well, we are. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we feel we have to distinguish ourselves from the rest of the animal kingdoms and the plant kingdom. I understand the lore and the appreciation of the plant kingdom, but I think we do a big disservice to the plant people and to ourselves when we think that we are separate from
plant people.
Yes. To me, they're people. Someone said to me the other day, Miranda, you know the difference between you and me? And I said, well, no. And she said to me, because to you, everything talks. And it's true, it does.
Yeah.
And I think that if we hold the perspective, at least the possibility of it, that people will understand they're hearing and experiencing a lot more. What is it when we go into the Grand Canyon that we can stand in what would be defined as silence, and it's not? What is it that we feel? What is it that we sense? And people say they're rocks, for Pete's sake. They're stones, and they're beings, and they carry a lot of information, just as we know plants. And there are those wonderful people who are making music, attaching diodes to plants.
Yes.
It's just and that's a study that goes back years, Jeffrey, as we know. So I feel we are doing a disservice to ourselves every time we say we are separate from, we have a higher intelligence. No, we have a different form of intelligence. I really encourage people to take a look at, and everyone is used to hearing we are all one, we are so-and-so.
Yeah.
That's really great, but if you don't really understand what that means, you have a tendency to say, yeah, but my cat doesn't drive my car. No, that's correct, and your cat didn't mess up the environment either. So,
well, humans seem to be the only species who have the capacity to destroy all life on the planet.
That's a really great point. I have no argument for that. That's absolutely true.
And it's because of the fact that we make tools. I know other animals
animals use tools, many of them. Crows being one, make their own tools. But we can't really hide behind the fact that it's because we make tools. It's how far we've taken it.
Yeah.
With this intelligence that we have.
Right.
With this intelligence that we have, we've messed up a lot.
We have the ability to imagine ourselves as being separate from nature.
We do. And we are not. And in fact, as fast as we are going forward about we can create and using nanotechnology to build itself, that's exciting and very stimulating. At the same time, why don't we use that technology to undo what we've done, as opposed to having such new frontiers? Just for our consideration.
Well, undoing what we've done seems to be one of our weaknesses.
Yes.
But let me try and grasp what might be an important differentiator, and that is the idea of imagining something that doesn't exist. We seem to have the capacity to imagine something that's not in the physical world at all, and either to believe that it's real, like a work of fiction, a story, a religious myth, or to create it, like to go out and invent it. Now, do animals, in your experience, are they able to imagine things that aren't there?
I think no. And that, from my perspective, they can help us in what we are trying to work on, but no. The animals are fully present. Now, here's what I mean by that. A lot of people think that fully present means tied to the present frame of time. And that's actually not what I mean in this case. I mean there is a full presence that exists in more than one realm, if you will. All of it is real. We just defined it. The only commonality that we have is, energy. Everything comes down to energy. The quantum physics about a table is really just molecules put together. There's space in between. Took us one heck of a long time to get that far. So with a species that says you have to be able, if it's real, it has to be, that in itself is incredibly limiting. If you subscribe to that, you're going to hold yourself in the pattern of doing harm. The interesting thing is, the very thing that we create, which is real, is the very thing that is messing up where we live. If we were more allowed ourselves to be aware of, that's not creating another reality. That's being aware of what's already there.
Well, what you're suggesting is that on the spectrum of things that could be sensed, human sensory apparatus is much more limited.
Well, Jeffrey, here's the thing about that. It's only limited because we have made choices to believe that science is God. We get into a position where, unless it can be done again and again or proved, unless it can be so-and-so, it is holding us in that pattern as being a form of judgment against what reality is.
But what I meant was a little different, I think. I was thinking, for example, dogs have maybe 1 million times more olfactory acuity than a human has.
Yes. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It exists.
No, it does exist.
Exactly.
We're blind to it. They can smell things that we can't even imagine.
That's right.
And they can hear sounds that we cannot hear.
That's right. And so if we allow ourselves to dissolve the difference between us and them as a different species, we can utilize their senses. We can utilize what they do, and we become a hunting team. We become an incredibly powerful grouping of people, of beings.
Well, there's extraordinary symbiosis between humans and domesticated animals.
Yes.
And I suppose even wild animals, we live in a kind of symbiotic relationship with them as well.
We do. We do. And as a matter of fact, right now I was just studying some work on everyone separating wolves from us. And it's interesting because when we look back in history as to who taught whom, we are now uncovering how old wolves are, how their lives actually had more effect on us than ours on them, that they actually trained us to hunt with them. We didn't train them.
Really?
They trained us.
I see.
So it's fascinating to look at all the animals.
Now, how would anybody know what took place so many thousands of years ago?
There's a wonderful man, Safina, who has written wonderful books. He's a researcher. And his focus is actually going back, and he has proof and studies and what we've discovered recently about the aging of wolves and when we came onto the planet and what they were doing and how they were advanced hunting before we were.
I see.
So it's an interesting connection.
Well, now speaking of wolves is a good example because dogs are very closely linked to wolves and are probably dogs are a species probably, I'm guessing, created by humans.
Yeah, well, they have just now changed the name back to wolf for canines. It used to be canine familiaris. Now it's back to canine lupus. And that has to do with the fact that, they actually are wolves.
They are wolves.
Yeah.
But we have created, let's put it this way, many, many varieties of dogs that are total human creations.
Yes, totally. Yeah, designer beings.
Our genetic experimentation on dogs has been going on for thousands of years.
Right. Well, yes, we've been messing with them.
Yeah.
For not that long, not thousands of years, but certainly for a few hundred in the sense of specific breeding.
Very specifically, but I would imagine even older.
Oh yes, our interactions affected.
Not, breeding experiments is what I'm thinking. Isolating populations, not doing genetic engineering.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
But animals don't do genetic breeding on humans, do they?
Too bad. I have a feeling they might have some great improvements. I certainly have experienced them to have some great improvements.
You've worked with many different animal species.
Yeah, not nearly enough, but I have. I enjoy each one of them. Certainly, and I haven't had as much depth in every field that I would love to, but every single species has a different culture. They have a different way to exist, and they have full civilizations and societies within their own cultures. We are just finding out technically about them. We're just studying them. And I find bees to be absolutely fascinating because the dance that bees do with each other, which we thought was in the beginning just a dance and how they would gather their pollen and what they're doing, they're actually passing on information to another bee as to where the best flowers are, what direction, what elevation. The information of, and don't bother going over to that field because they're not there. Very intricate information so that the bee can return to the hive and create food for everyone.
So it's a language.
Absolutely. And therefore the culture matches that language. We come along and we may step on a bee or we may use pesticides, which I know we all are aware of now is what's been a real problem for the bees, which is a problem for us because they supply us with our food. But paying attention to what's going on with them, I believe we will be able to help them come back. We're starting to, but we're a ways. Yeah.
Well, it requires, I suppose, I'm going to call it an eco-psychology, an understanding of how everything is connected.
Yes. And it requires, and that's one of the things I love about the kids who are growing up today. I find them to be so excited about the environment because they are feeling they can do more, which is wonderful because they have a really hard job ahead of them. But if you listen to them, they will talk about how excited they cleaned up a park and they know so-and-so and they will correct people and they are starting to be much more forthcoming. They're starting to be much more verbal about what's right and what needs to happen. And, wonderful teachers are teaching these young people. Yeah.
Human teachers.
Human teachers. Well, all kinds.
Well, do you think that animals have a sense of ecology? That's a pretty abstract notion.
It's more that they, it depends on what level we're communicating with them. If we look at them as a generalized species, yes, there are animals that move to different areas because an area is burned out. So, in other words, are they saying, that's too bad, we have to do this? They're surviving.
Yeah.
But as far as where they're going to have their young, they will move because they cannot support their young or they die.
Yeah.
You know, so do they pull off the planet and look at the ecology? Usually not until they've transitioned out of their body, and that's a whole nother subject.
Which we'll spend a whole half hour on that subject as well, because I know you have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to learn.
But that's a commonality. What you're saying is that if there's an afterlife that humans experience, you're saying animals are there too.
Because I think we that's a whole nother subject, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I mean, I hesitate because
we can give our viewers a taste.
Yeah, okay. So it's a whole nother subject to look at. If we are in an afterlife, which I have experienced that is what's happening, then our responsibilities continue. It is not that we say, oh, well, I no longer have to do this or do that. We have responsibilities for what we can do. And we are much more powerful out of body in a lot of ways than in. And when we have and come into an actual physical body, because we're just using a body for a human experience, then our responsibilities become on the ground. What are we going to do about it? So it's not, oh, gee, when I die, everything is gone, you know.
Well, you've introduced an interesting word, responsibility. Humans have responsibilities.
Yeah.
We have duties. We have obligations. We have a sense that we're here for a purpose.
Yes.
Do animals have a sense of purpose?
Absolutely. We hear humans talk about that they remember, I'm one of those, that I remember the agreements I made before I came into this life. Animals have the same. They have people they work with. They have agreements as far as, one of my favorite stories is a dog who, as he was transitioning, he had been taking care of children that were being abused in a home. And the animal was transitioned by one of the parents because it was a very torturous situation and they didn't like that the dog was bringing comfort to the children.
When you say transitioned, you mean euthanized?
Euthanized. And I followed this animal because I wanted to know how do you make peace leaving your children, these human children? How do you make peace with that? And what he showed me was, and this is, I know this is going out there, but I can only say what I've experienced.
Yes.
He's connected to a whole network of beings that work with children that are being physically abused in physical. They are not in the physical, but they are a network that help to bring peace and focus as much as they can and support to those children who are just trying to make it.
Like spiritual guides.
Absolutely, spiritual guides, but also right along with them.
So the dog, you're saying is a dog, has a team of spiritual guides.
And I'll tell you another place I ran into, one of my favorite experiences, was a dog who transitioned, and he showed me after he transitioned where he was. And I didn't understand it because what I kept seeing was explosions, little explosions, but they were horrific in the sense that everyone was shattered and it was nighttime. So I asked to pull up above it to see what it looked like. And I saw a map and it was somewhere near Africa. That was the best I could tell. But I could see this coming up from the map. And I saw this dog, not in physical form, but in the dark, leading these children who were running in the dark. I didn't know what to do with it. I told the human, this is what it is. I don't know anything about it. And it was about 4 nights later. I just happened to turn on the news, and here were the children of Darfur. And they were running to escape at night. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's where part of this network is working. If you were to turn on the lights in the daytime, you would not see the dogs. But these children had to trust, had to be led. Their parents were trying to get them out before they'd be harmed. So What happens is these children that are open out of desperation to any one and thing that will help them, they don't know who's leading them. Dog doesn't have a flashlight. They follow that energy. They follow what they may hear a dog that isn't actually in physical form, but that's how they go.
Well, it would seem as if there's something about being civilized, which most humans are civilized, that causes us to lose many of our intuitive organs of perception.
Right. Well, we had them. We had them. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it past caveman. We had to feel and sense if there was an animal that was going to kill us around the corner. We had to do that. And what's happening now is many of us are using those skills, again, right side of the brain. And that's what we need to do. We need to be able to sense when the internet goes down what's actually going on.
Well, let me ask you this, because we're so close to our domesticated animals, they become civilized in a way like we do. Do they also lose some of that gift?
Many of them do. I haven't experienced animals that I could not communicate with. I've experienced animals, one in particular, that did not want to communicate. That's a choice. That's a conscious choice of no human. No. But as far as do they stay intact or as alert as wild animals? No. Wild animals are running on intuition. They're running on their senses. That's how they breathe. That's how they stay alive. And we could do that. We just have to make a conscious effort to start opening up and doing that. You know?
To change the subject a little, something that has always really intrigued me is I see it on movies, nature films in particular, where you have animals that are potentially very aggressive, animals that are potentially predators, or are predators. Tigers, bears, Komodo dragons, for example. And yet there are some people who are able to just walk amongst them, touch them, pet them. They're not sedated. They're wild animals. And yet some people are completely unafraid in the presence of these animals. And the animals seem to acknowledge and respect that and don't harm those individuals.
That's right. That's right. So your question is why and how is that?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that is it's communication and it's agreements. And it also means that when you make an agreement with an animal that you will not harm it, that they can sense beyond and through you that that's the actual energetic you carry, that you are in integrity, that is who you are. Yeah, it's like
why should they even care when you're a tasty meal?
It's the R word, respect. It's respect. There's some animals that actually will save prey for one reason or another. So, and where do those decisions come from? What is the difference? You know, I remember seeing something that really shocked me in a good way was a nature program of a tiger that had taken down a zebra. And I have a hard time watching it. I understand it. And I respect it. But I watched this, I guess it was a lion. I watched this lion. He had the zebra right in front of him. He had it by the neck, and it was dying. And he just held it and sat there very still until its life, until it left. He was not ripping and shredding. And I watched that animal, and it was as though he was saying a prayer. He was respectful. He had gotten what he came to get. There was no rush. And he let that happen.
And animals do seem to understand the difference between life and death.
Oh, sure. Either that being is showing energetics or not. Pretty straight ahead. And remember, energy doesn't have the limits that we think there's a limit. No. For beings and people who sense energy, there are no limits. You just keep seeing different layers, perhaps, or distances. That's certainly the way I experience a lot of things. And animals have to do that to survive.
Would you say that animals, that there's a sense like when a human comes into the world, we often feel it's here to learn some lessons. It's here to evolve, to progress, maybe to some higher level of consciousness. Whether that's true or not, it's certainly a meme that we have about ourselves. Is it true of animals?
It depends on the karma of that animal, and there are many different sects that use animals in their beliefs. But I have met humans in animal bodies. I have met beings that have had a human experience.
Had a human incarnation and now are an animal again.
Yeah. And see, we make the mistake by saying, oh, they went backwards. See? That intrigues me because that's where our egos come up.
Perhaps they went forward.
Exactly. And it depends on what they have to learn. It depends on how does your soul get you in the position that you can actually learn something. It may be quite intricate before you get to the place where that's what you have to learn. And sometimes that may include an animal body.
Okay.
Yeah. To learn those specific lessons, which also means it isn't that long of a lifetime.
And we have shamanistic traditions where the shaman will incorporate or enter into the body of an animal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I guess, well, it's such a large topic.
It is.
There's so much that could be said.
Yeah, you know, and that gets into shape shifting, and that gets into, but the bottom line is, if we open up to possibility, that's all I'm asking. I am not here to convince anyone of anything. All I'm here is to offer an hors d'oeuvre tray. Give it a possibility. If it doesn't work, toss it.
Well, Miranda Alcott, you've lived your whole life this way. You've been doing this a long, long time. And seems to have been your natural path.
Yeah, my entelechy, many lifetimes.
Your entelechy, that's a great word.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with me, Miranda. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for asking me, Jeffrey. I enjoy coming.
I know we're going to have a lot more to talk about.
We are.
As well.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. And thank you for being with us.